Let's talk sourdough starter. I started this one a few days ago from scratch. Um, if you want to do some sourdough baking, you can talk perhaps to some friends that may have a sourdough starter. That'd be more than happy usually to share that with you. Um, but or you can order one online. But it really takes nothing to get one started from scratch. Simple all-purpose flour. I literally started this with this much flour and then some water, not quite equal measure, just slightly less water. Here we go. And that's it. That's what I started with a few days ago. If you have municipal water that has chlorines in it and that type of thing, you may want to use some distilled water. I do that. So I'll start with this, let that go for 12 hours, feed it again, and each time it's doubling in size. And so you can see just in a few days, you get to this, but also what you see is the activity going. And you get to a certain point, you'll either need to toss some of your starter or divide it. That's what I'm gonna do here. We'll just go ahead and divide this real quickly. Somewhere around half. And then, now it's ready to be fed. You really need to feed this twice a day or your activity is going to slow down. The goal is to get this very active. So in about a week's time, your sourdough starter will be active enough and of a large enough volume that you can make a bread if you choose. I suggest if you've never done sourdough, starting with sourdough pancakes. They're a little less finicky. You get that great, the acid aroma from it, and I think you'll really enjoy those. So I would start with pancakes, move on to bread. Sourdough bread is a little tough, and it's I consider it a holy grail of baking. And I haven't perfected it by any means. I understand the principles, but I'm still working at it. So let's feed this starter, and then we'll be ready by the end of the week to perhaps make a bread. So I'm just going to use the volume method. You can do it by weight. I'm going to estimate. Oh, what a mess. I'm going to estimate it by volume. And let me get something. That mess really does drive me crazy. So I put about about double the volume that it was. We'll go ahead and get both of these. How much liquid that you use will also affect the sourness of your sourdough. A little bit drier, or as in thick, not really dry, will make your sourdough more sour. A more liquid will make it have less of that pronounced lactobacillus in it. So we'll bring this one up a little. See, I could have tossed this, but I could also share it with a friend. So now we have basically twice the volume we had. Then it's just a little bit of the water, room temperature to warm. You don't want it over 100 degrees. So slightly less water by volume. Don't get real caught up in it at this stage. You're just, right now you're wanting your sourdough to just be happy and multiplying. And if you're just beginning, you're not so concerned about whether it's super sour sourdough or a less. You're just wanting to enjoy that great flavor and the sense of accomplishment. So both of those are still too dry. I'm just using side on these. I have a friend that bakes bread all the time, and she uses a very liquidy starter. So, you know, all that to say, don't get really worked up and think everything has to be perfect. As long as you're feeding it regular, you're not going to have any problems with typically with bad things growing in there. It's when you forget about it that some difficulties can arise. Some you know, you get some brown in there, it's time to think about tossing it. But so there it is. I promise you, I normally don't make this big of a mess, but I'm normally not trying to talk at the same time. So sour actually means fermented. When we talk about sourdough, sour pickles, sauerkraut, all of that simply means that it has yeast in it that consumes the sugars, turns it to an alcohol, and then you have the bacteria in it that turns that from alcohol to acetic acid. So that's where the vinegar taste of it comes from. And you know, and I even have, like, I keep vinegar going. This is homemade red wine vinegar. Like when you drink a bottle of wine and you have just a little bit left over, I pour it in here. This has a mother in it. It's always going. We have that. So these are yeast, wild yeast that are just in the air and around you. Don't get caught up with the San Francisco yeast, because you could order it from there and you will get a very pronounced San Francisco type yeast taste in your sourdough for a short period of time. But the longer that yeast goes in your area, it will become the dominant yeast in your area. So I just say start with what you have. Don't spend the money. You know, I've seen it $8 or $15 and you get a little starter maybe like this. And if you want to go that route, that's fine. I say go with the yeast that you have available and start experimenting. We'll look at how this goes and how it develops and what we're able to do with it. Thanks for watching. Hey, and like and subscribe. It'll help me out. Thanks. Yeah, baby.